Okay, let's get this show on the road. We got a lot of work tonight. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Winnetka Village Council regular meeting for February 21st, 2023. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask that everybody in the room either mute or turn off your cell phones or other noise-making electronic devices. And I'll ask the village manager to do a roll call for attendance.
Certainly. Trustee Apatow?
Here.
Trustee Kripe?
Here.
Trustee Handler?
Here.
Trustee Dearborn?
Here.
Trustee Swerk?
Here.
Trustee Dahlman?
Here.
President Rintz.
Here. Item 2 is Pledge of the Allegiance, and because I forgot to ask somebody, I will lead us this evening. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, Rob, you want to do a quorum check, please?
Certainly. The March meetings, the 7th, the 14th, and the 21st.
One of those will be an issue. I think it's going to be the 21st will be an issue.
Okay, thank you.
I'll let you know
Okay,
from the teaching.
good.
I'm off the 7th.
The 7th, Bob?
The 14th and the 21st may be an issue. And
Okay.
I know the 14th is a big meeting.
It is?
I don't think so.
Comp
Oh,
plan.
I think 21st is.
Yeah, that's right.
I,
Okay.
I'm still trying to figure out what's on the agenda tonight.
Yeah, it's scheduled to go on the 14th. Okay,
I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Okay, we good there, Rob?
okay, yeah, thank you.
All right, item 4 is public comment. This is the time of the evening when anybody in the audience may address village council on any item that is not on the agenda. So if you'd like to share your thoughts with us on an item that is not currently being dealt with in this evening's agenda, you're welcome to come on up to the podium and share your thoughts. Seeing none, I will close public comment session and we'll move forward. Thank you. Okay, reports. Trustees first. We'll start down with Rob.
Just a quick one. I'm working. Just pleased with the traction that the commerce team is getting and putting in new businesses. Vacancy continues to tumble as far as retail vacancy. Hubbard Woods in 2019 had a 20% vacancy rate, and now it's down to 3.75%. We're below the Cook County average vacancy rate of 6 overall. 5 new businesses are slated to open in Q1 and Q2. We've had another 6 opening in Q4 and Q1. So going in the right direction. I always get asked from many residents, you know, how are we doing? Are people just vacating? They see one person leave. They don't realize that others are really stepping up, and the traction is good. So it's encouraging. The team's doing a very nice job.
Awesome, thanks. Andy.
No report.
Kim.
No report.
Bob.
No report.
John.
No report.
No
Tina?
report.
Okay. Village attorney.
No report.
Village manager.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Village president. Just wanted to mention, I guess Andy was over there too, stopped by to see Congressman Schneider earlier this evening. He's at Skokie School addressing the public. Suggested to his staff that we would certainly like to attend these when he comes to town, and I guess it's a regular thing for him. So this means that he has actually engaged our community one time more than Jan Schakowsky has in her 20 years of leadership in our so it was good to see Brad actually coming into the town and reaching out, and certainly I think we'd all like to be able to be involved with those conversations. I think we will end up with a good partner there that could help us in a lot of funding opportunities if we keep those lines of communication open. So that's my report. Item 6 is the approval of the consent agenda. Trustee Swerk has requested that we remove items D and E from the agenda prior to the meeting. Does any trustee wish to remove any other items on the consent agenda for a separate vote? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we'll move forward on the consent agenda. I'll ask the village clerk to read the items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Approval of the village council minutes dated January 31st, 2023, special meeting, January 31st, 2023 special study session, February 7th, 2023 regular meeting, approval of the warrant list dated January 27th, 2023 through February 9th in the amount of $508,954.24. Resolution number R23, 2023, approving a contract with Rubino Engineering Incorporated for material testing services. Resolution number R26, 2023, approving a non-exclusive license agreement for the use of Elm Street train station parking lot and the station park for a farmer's market, Resolution number R27, 2023, authorizing extension of the agreement with Christie Weber and Company for the Commercial District Floral Program. Resolution number R28, 2023, awarding a contract with St. Aubin Nursery and Landscape Group for the purchase of planting of parkway trees. Resolution number R29, 2023, waiving bidding and approving the purchase of pedestrian lighting from KSA Lighting and Controls Incorporated for adoption and approval of the annual outdoor seating area permits.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Apitoff?
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving forward, resolution number R24, 2023, approving an outdoor dining agreement with Paradise Foods Italia LLC, doing business as Toco. Just open up for council comments, huh? I can only do what the script tells me. Do what the script. Otherwise I'm looking for horrible retribution tomorrow.
I'd like to make a motion to approve that resolution.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any conversation on this item?
Yeah, I'd like to just point out why I wanted to pull that off the list. Just trying to be consistent with, I believe a lot of people on the council already know. I just think there should be some payment made by Good Grapes and Taco. This one is only the first one, sorry, is Taco, because they're using public streets. And they're doubling the size of the restaurant, or sometimes even more than doubling the size of the restaurant, and not paying rent. And it's not competitive to other people that are paying rents for their restaurant spaces. So that's the reason why I pulled it.
I thought we had left it where I think everyone here wants to not hinder the feeling that this outdoor dining is bringing to the community, and I think we all love that. I do think it's really a unique situation to that restaurant because of it's good for them where they're located. But I thought we'd left it where we said it was, if they have 35 seats in the restaurant, they can have another 50% or even 100%, but they can't have 200 or 300% more capacity than, because otherwise somebody can buy just a little storefront and have, with 5 seats inside and have 50 outside. So I just don't know. I think we were trying to say we don't want to hinder it, but we want to be at least equitable to the players in the game. I thought that's where we left it. I know we got busy and other stuff, and
Well, I thought we said we would be willing, to my knowledge, we've never denied a permit for outdoor use. And it was one restaurant that came with a theoretical concern. But to my knowledge, we've never denied a permit. And I think we've said we want to do we don't want to, I think Andy's comment was we don't want to nickel and dime people. We
Right.
want to create and foster an environment for people to have the opportunity to expand their restaurants if they want. And if people have concerns, then I think we talked about having somebody from the village reach out and see what we could do to help accommodate expanding their operations, rather than looking at limiting in other restaurants and being the arbiter of, size and all those things. Work with other businesses that express concerns. And I think that's how we left it, not trying to limit them or cause a fee.
I think the nickel and dime comment came, which I agree with. We have to see something very clean if we're going to do anything. It was because those other restaurants are already paying taxes on much larger space and footage. And so, for instance, Minos was the example that obviously that came up. They're paying property taxes on all that space. And so they have what they need is kind of what they're saying.
And I believe they're actually I don't think they were totally transparent.
Okay,
They're actually using village right of way.
are they?
They are.
And they use public land to store their, I think, or part of the parking structure in the past to store some of their outdoor seating stuff. Or
My
patio
personal
furniture.
feeling on it was that if there's payments to be made, it should be coming from the village to those businesses that have revived what was formerly a dead area that you wouldn't want to be caught dead in at night. And so the nickel and diming is why on earth would we be charging them when we probably should be paying them for what they've done to revitalize that area? And I know
Yeah,
you see it
yeah,
differently,
right.
but I had a
That's okay.
real problem with restaurant owners getting up and pleading they've got it better when they weren't being honest or transparent about the fact that they're using village property already, that we've bent over backwards. You know, I was here for the approval of all of those restaurants. I know the money we invested to revitalize streetscape in front of the restaurants, and I know that we've never denied anybody anything. You come to this village with an idea, it's not a question of are you gonna get a yes, it's just how do we get to yes?
But the only reason why this was put on the street was because of COVID and the restrictions of inside dining
And it was
to let them keep their business moving.
brilliant coincidence, accident, happy,
Right.
fortunate thing.
So
It's
let-
great.
So my
It's a
concern is
creative
let's
idea.
I don't
pretend,
really care how
let's
we got
pretend
there.
I rent a space on Lincoln.
Yeah.
And I decide, hey, I want to close half the street. You do it for Chestnut, why can't I close Lincoln?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
we had the argument, we had the debate, and nothing's gonna change my mind.
That's
What
actually
they've done
the-
for this village is brilliant, so I made a motion.
At the end of the day, that's where we left it, was that we approved it last year. We invited businesses throughout the community to bring their ideas if they want to look at certain concepts for expanding. We'd made no guarantees that any of them would be approved. We also recognized that Chestnut was a special location.
It is.
It doesn't have a lot of the constraints that Lincoln might or Chestnut might, that, you know, there was a lot of conversation. We burned a lot of intellectual capital that evening talking about this, and I'm not willing to open it up right now, but
Hey, Chris, can I
Can I
just
just-
add for the record, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead, you guys-
Is that,
remember, I'm stopping the meeting at 9:30.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, you know, in particular, I remember, and I just want to make sure the record reflects that for Minos, we said we would even consider if they wanted to shut down the
Yeah.
street, right? And if they wanted to have a beer garden and, you know, whatever.
Yep.
We're open to all ideas and want to,
Bring them,
right.
Yeah.
That's, I just wanted to remind everybody that
exactly.
it's not just Chestnut, we're willing to consider other areas as well.
Right, and we really haven't had any other visionary ideas. You know, argument could be made that we've modified our streetscape plan to, you know, give a competitive edge to Hometown because they have so much more outdoor seating than anybody else does. But the bottom line, I think that what we all came to agreement on is that the vibrancy is something we all enjoy. It's something that's beginning to define our community, and it's something we want to continue to support. I hear you, John, I hear what you're saying, and I know there is some imbalance there, but absent of us spending 3 hours at the table trying to hammer something out, I think this is kind of where we're falling, so. Kim, you wanted to say something?
I
I'm
did
sorry.
two points. One is administrative clarification for me, but one, in a sense, they do end up paying the village because if their sales increase substantially, a portion of that sales tax does go to the village that we wouldn't get otherwise. Is that correct? It might not be a huge amount, but it is a payment. And then secondly, just from, again, my understanding, the reason the two resolutions have to do with shutting down Chestnut, because we effectively just approved the permit with item J, because both of those restaurants are on the list of permits for outdoor dining with a defined number of
Those are for,
tables.
those are for the sidewalks, not the street.
Okay, that's the difference. Okay, thank you, that's what I needed to understand.
Other thoughts?
This is a one-year agreement, okay.
Okay, let's call the vote. Roll call vote.
Okay, motion by trustee Kripe, second by trustee Dahlman. Trustee Kripe,
Yes.
trustee Dahlman,
Yes,
trustee Apitoff,
On a one-year, yes.
trustee Handler,
Yes,
trustee Dearborn,
Yes?
trustee Swerve.
No.
You can't do that.
I know, yes.
I don't want to see you eating.
All right, resolution number R 25, 2023, approving an outdoor dining agreement with Good Grapes. Council comments, and first of all, somebody want to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Conversation on resolution number R 25, 2023. Same game across the plaza.
Correct.
Hearing none? Did I hear anything else? Okay, Rob, roll call vote?
Trustee Kreip,
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman,
Yes.
Trustee Abutok.
Yep.
Trustee Handler,
Yes,
Trustee Dearborn.
Yes.
Trustee Swerk.
No.
Okay, that motion carries, thank you. All right, item 8, ordinances and resolution, ordinance number M04, 2023, 232 Sheridan, GFA corner and rear yard setback variations. This is up for introduction. Council will consider approving a zoning variation for the construction of a 2-story addition and other amenities. And Community Development Director David Schoen is here this evening to review.
Good evening. The applicant is requesting a series of variations to allow an addition to an existing home on the subject property. The Zoning Board of Appeals considered this at 2 meetings, one in December and one in January. As included in the materials the council received, there are images of the existing home that sits on the property. I wanted to note the loop street labeled Sheridan Road that runs along the north side of the property and around 4 other lots is a private street based upon our definition in the zoning code. So for zoning purposes, the easement area in which that street is located is not included in the lot area for each of the individual lots, and all setbacks for the 5 lots that access it are measured from the easement, not from the property lines of each lot. At the December meeting, the board was primarily concerned with the request for additional gross floor area as well as the rear yard setback request. At that meeting, the board asked if the applicant could reduce the width of that addition off the rear in order to reduce the amount of the requested relief. The applicant agreed to a continuation so they could study how they might be able to do that. So at the January meeting, the applicant came back with amended plans representing reducing the 2-story addition on the west, the width of it by 2 feet. In addition, the applicant is going to remove a small portion of the existing family room that's on the west side. The highlighted numbers in this chart show the variations that changed between December and January. The roof lot coverage request, the variation is now for an additional 14 feet. The GFA variation requested now is for an additional 646 feet, a 20.6% variation. It's important to note that the existing residence already exceeds the maximum GFA by nearly 500 square feet. So the proposed addition is adding approximately 147 square feet of additional GFA. Also highlighted here in yellow, in blue, is the rear yard setback, which is now 7.08 feet, which requires a variation of 8.4 feet. So they reduced that amount from the previous proposal. The proposed garage width would be 22.52 feet, which exceeds the maximum permitted for a front-facing garage. I should point out that private street is considered a corner side yard and has to meet the front-facing requirements, front-facing garage requirements. So the width of it is just 6 inches over the maximum allowed of 22 feet. The applicant has reduced the size of the kitchen as well as the upper level to mitigate the request being, or the relief being requested. The table on this slide compares the code requirements with the existing conditions, the original plan, and the amended plan, which the council is currently considering. The applicant has reduced the extent of zoning relief for 4 of the 6 variations. The only 2 that didn't change was the proposed corner side yard setback along that private street, and the 18-foot wide garage door remains unchanged from the original plan. In the materials, you have images of the proposal in terms of the location of the proposed addition, and there are elevations provided in the materials showing how the new home would look from the various perspectives. Just run through those, go back to those if necessary. So in the end, the zoning board recommended approval by a vote of 4-2. The 2 members who voted against still had concerns regarding the additional GFA request, and hoped that maybe it could be minimized even further. The 4 who voted in favor felt the uniqueness of the property, this easement on the property for the private street, and how it relates to the other 4 homes that are part of this development, that they felt that the relief that was being requested was appropriate, and they recommended approval. You do have in your materials letters of support from 4 of the property owners immediately adjacent to the subject property. And the last thing I would note is, given the ZBA didn't unanimously recommend approval tonight, we have only placed introduction of the ordinance. So if the council does approve introduction and wants to consider adoption, that would have to occur at a future meeting. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for David?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have no questions.
Oh, I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. There's a 52-foot, is it 52 feet yard setback from Sheridan Road? Or is
Yes.
that
That's an existing condition?
yeah, is that, I'm looking, it says 52 feet setback. I don't know if it's from Sheridan Road or is it from the other,
It's from Sheridan Road.
yeah, okay. And then did the neighbor to the north, did anybody come out and object to this at the first zoning hearing
no
in
one-
December?
No.
Okay, thank you, David.
Other questions?
David, I think it would be worth pointing out, you and I spoke about this today. Red is dead.
Orange is dead.
But I thought this was an interesting one because this could have been a good, the first test of our new bonus for historic structures. If this had if there was a wrecking ball on this one, they could have gone to the LPC. I think it probably they would have done backflips to deem this historically significant. And then they would have been qualified for the 20% bonus GFA, and they're at 20.6%.
Yeah.
So I think the GFA argument to me sort of takes care of itself because I think this would have qualified for that.
Good point.
And the letters, I mean, that's the one thing I wanted to see is that the people on the west and the north who, this is most impacting would support this, and they supported it. So it's, those are the neighbors that are gonna see this.
That's a great analogy for the bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
And it really is mainly the footage, not the roof coverage. The roof coverage was minuscule, so.
Right, it is, already there.
And these are such unique houses.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just an extraordinary cluster of houses.
Others? Ralph, Kim? No? All right, I'll open it up to public. Is the applicant here this evening? Hi, how you doing? Good. You want to come up and say hi to us? Sure. You don't have to, I mean.
I like your house.
Yeah.
It's a cool house.
We do too. So a little bit of background, my wife and I moved to Winnetka, honestly, because there was one rental available between Chicago and Highland Park, and it happened to be at 226 Sheridan Road, which is one of the 5 houses. As soon as we were moving in, 232 came up for sale. We loved where we were. We didn't love the house we were in at 226, so we bought 232 thinking that we could do renovations while living at 226. So it kind of became a perfect situation for us. My father's an architect, so he's done all the plans. He came to the first 2 zoning meetings. So that's really kind of how this all started. I have just a brief narrative for you, and then I'll open up to if you have any questions.
Sure.
My wife and I purchased 232 Sheridan with the intent to preserve its historical significance while updating it to meet the needs of our family. During the Zoning Board of Appeals process, I think we demonstrated hardships that meet all of the 8 standards for each of the 6 requested variations. Leah White designed her villas as a cohesive unit around a beautiful courtyard. All of the lots are non-conforming, all of the homes have a variety of non-conformities. In 2004, our neighbors at 224 undertook a renovation project, and we used that as inspiration and guidelines for our project. The main issue with our project with regards to the zoning regulations is the treatment of the driveway as a private road. This means that what many would consider to be our driveway is not included in our lot area. This affects roof lot coverage and gross floor area. It also means that our side-facing garage in the rear of the lot is treated as a front-facing garage on a corner lot. That also takes away the 200 square foot bonus that would be given to a side-facing garage in the rear of a lot. 4 of the 6 variations are necessary, at least in part because of the treatment of the easement. While by code it is considered a private road, in usage is essentially just a driveway. If the easement were treated like a driveway, the garage would not be considered front-facing. The property would also be eligible for the 200 square foot exclusion from GFA. Additionally, 1,063 square feet of the easement would be used for the calculation of roof lot coverage and gross floor area. Taken into account, this would allow for 3,757.6 square feet of GFA. Our request is 3,778.69, which is 0.56% over what would be allowed. Our roof lot coverage would be under the maximum when this is taken into account. The corner setback will not increase, and reducing the rear setback is the only way to expand the house without drastically changing the character of the house and the subdivision. All of our contiguous neighbors have written letters in support of our project, including the ones who are directly affected by the setback variations. I will also that we are reducing our impermeable lot coverage by more than 100 feet by eliminating the paved surface to expand the garage, and then the rest that's left would be landscaping.
So,
Thank you.
well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out tonight. Anybody have any questions or comments for the applicant?
We sort of foresaw you coming to us with this request about a year or 2 ago. And we said if a historic structure could be saved, we want to do everything we can to save it, and we would, as sort of matter of policy, give the opportunity for the applicant to ask for 20%.
Absolutely, and I was aware of that,
Yeah.
and I saw that there was an additional process to that.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to avoid the additional process if possible, but
Yeah, fair enough.
I think we have a good argument without that, but I really appreciate that because I do think it's important, and I hope that the other people in the community will also consider that if they do want to make changes to their
Yeah.
homes.
Others?
Looks beautiful.
No. Well, thank you, Mr. Franson, really appreciate it. Anybody from the public like to speak on this item? You're the last man standing, so expect a lot of attention from this point forward. Okay. If there's no questions or comments, I'd like to bring this up and ask for a motion to introduce ordinance number M4 2023.
Second.
Voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Next meeting, you'll be through. It'll probably be on consent, so you won't even have to come if you don't want to. But you can come if you want. It gets kind of lonely here all by ourselves.
Do you any comments on Centennial Elder?
Yeah, right. I thought I was gonna dodge it for a week. Just 1 week without the Park District's mess in my lap. Okay, item C this evening is resolution number R30, 2023, amending resolution number R117, 2022 to amend the method of calculating renewable energy production credits, and this is up for introduction. Village staff is recommending the council consider changing the method used to calculate renewable energy production credits. And Brian Keys, our Director of Water and Electric, is here to walk us through this tonight.
The ordinance, I'm sorry, President Rentz.
I'm just a trained,
Okay,
I just read with, is that right?
I'm gonna start with the ordinance, if that's okay? Okay. All
Did I
right,
miss
so,
something? Or did I jump?
thank you for the introduction. So I'd like to discuss two proposed changes to the village code that affects the interconnection of renewable energy sources to the village's electric system. The policy that's in place was originally adopted in 2018 and then amended for the calculation of credits was amended in 2019. But what we're talking about is qualifying customers can install renewable energy systems at their homes or businesses, properties, and deliver excess energy to the village's electric system. So we're talking about this interconnection. The regulations are related to how that would transpire. With the exception of this one change in 2019 on the calculation of credits for summer months, the policy has remained unchanged since it was originally adopted in 2018. And at this point in time, we're proposing changes to the code, and I'll go into those more specifically related to State of Illinois legislation, recommendation from the Utility Association, staff input on the administration of the policy, and customer feedback. And in addition to the individual that's here tonight, we've received input from other individuals. So there's two specific sections of code I wanted to talk to you about tonight, and with the assistance of the village attorney, the ordinance would, with your consideration, make some changes. So the first one is section 13.06.60, standards for renewable energy sources, and section 13.08, 155, credits for certain renewable energy sources. And the changes are going to expand basically the opportunity for customers to install renewable energy, provided it meets their consumption pattern. It's going to address administrative issues, and so it's really basically also ensure that we're in adherence with the state legislation. So a quick history lesson, and then I'll jump into the changes. So the policy for consideration originally for what was at the term used in the industry at the time was net metering. Again, metering energy that's delivered to the utility system was originally considered in 2006 by the village council, and after discussion, no policy change was implemented. In 2008, after the state required investor-owned utilities, so ComEd and Ameren, to provide one-to-one net metering, the village council revisited this decision. Also, we had a resident on Sheridan Road that was requesting some type of credit for excess energy. And so that was the basis for the dialogue where we landed on the policy that any excess energy delivered to the village's system was credited at the wholesale rate, so what it costs the village to get from IMEA. In current dollars, that would be, for example, our wholesale cost is nominally 8 cents a kilowatt hour this year, and the retail cost is 15 cents. So any energy, at that time, the policy was any energy delivered back to the system, excess that we metered coming back to the system, that the customer got a credit for the wholesale amount. After subsequently in 2019, discussions with residents, the environmental committee, and the council directed the staff to change that policy for energy in the excess energy in the summer months. So recognizing there was a benefit to reducing our peak demand, that benefit customers beyond the individual customer, for the summer months, excess energy is credited at the retail rate, so the 15 cents. Changes that are before you tonight, I'm not looking to revisit that policy decision with respect to the credit calculation, as far as the summer and the retail and the wholesale rate perspective, but more around the interconnection sizing and what's permitted. And then jump forward to now, or in recent times, in 2022, the state enacted legislation that's referred to by the media and the layperson as CEJA, so it's the Climate and Equitability Jobs Act. This provided rights to the customers beyond the investor-owned utility customers. Unfortunately, because some municipalities and cooperatives didn't really give their customers an equitable opportunity to install renewable energy systems, the legislation went out of its way to make sure that municipal entities and cooperatives are encompassed in what's called CEJA. Some of the components that we have to adhere to are we have to provide an opportunity for residential and small commercial customers to install renewable energy and self-generated electricity. So again, not necessarily over-generate, but self-generate and have renewable energy. We can't implement discriminatory fees or policies for self-generation. We have to have fair policies that provide also for reasonable credits for excess energy, but we also still have to maintain, or at sites that we have to balance those interests with those customers that don't do self-generation on renewable energy. We have to allow them to store energy at their residence. So for, in lay terms, this is, we have, I think, already 1 or 2 Tesla systems where they have battery systems in their house already installed, but we have to provide that provision to allow that. We have to have a transparent process for raising concerns on the policy, and we need to post that publicly. For almost all of these things, the existing policy that you have in place addresses the CEJA legislation with respect to the self-generation component. So in some cases, a customer could say that we're not allowing them to self-generate for their full needs because we have an existing limitation on the side of the solar system, and we'll talk about that in more detail. So I'd like to walk through the proposed changes, which again, I think it's the part that I would make sure the council is aware of is this is going to allow customers to install much larger solar systems or renewable energy systems on their property where we had a limitation of 10 kW, and there's going to be some protections built into this, but basically we're opening this up to a much wider possibility. Now, in the context of what's being proposed, I would say is think about it as this would permit District 36, North Shore Country Day, or the high school to put solar systems on their roof within this constraint, which previously they could, but the size was really, the limitation was more like this was set up for residential solar systems when we originally adopted it. So I'll step through the changes and then on the 2 sections of code, and I'll take questions. So first of all, we're eliminating this 10 kW provision that's in the current code. We're going to set a threshold of 25. So 25 is kind of like the new 10. So 25 and smaller is small commercial and residential. It's going to go through probably an expedited review process. Over 25 is where I see commercial and governmental institutions putting in much larger systems. It's going to require a more detailed engineering review, but they would be permitted to install those. We're incorporating changes that specifies or makes it clear that you, ultimately the village council, is setting what the renewable energy credit rate is going to be, and that you could make that a change in the future. We're incorporating language that addresses the status of any remaining or backlog of credits a customer has upon a termination of their utility account, and this same language is already contained in your annual rate resolution. We're building this into the village code. We're also incorporating language. We had one of these come up where a customer has multiple electric accounts, or a building, I should say, not a single customer. So we have a mixed-use building on Green Bay Road that put solar panels in. Fortunately, the person that was installing this was very easy to work with. The solar system was tied to the commercial account, but what we want to address is a provision that says when you install solar or a renewable energy system at the generic terms, it has to be matched to an individual account. The village is not going to do like pro rata splitting of credits across multiple accounts on a mixed-use building. And we're incorporating a language that basically says that, you know, from an administration point, I'm the entrance point for complaints. So the policy will be administered by the utility. Obviously, the escalation path is the village manager, ultimately the village council, but so that addresses the concern and transparency with the CEJA legislation. The second section of code is 13.08260, and again, some similar things. We removed the 10 kW limit. We were updating technical requirements that were put in place in 2008 to the current industry standards and also adding some to address these larger solar systems. The one piece that's going to be the limiting factor, and this is kind of the protection component, is the system will be sized for the output of the system will be sized to the customer's historical consumption. So if a customer typically uses 15,000 kilowatt hours a year, their system size that they can put in is to self-generate the 15,000, but they can't put a system in if they, assuming they had the roof space to do 100,000 kilowatt hours. So again, that's going to be the regulating component. And in most cases, rooftop coverage and shading is going to be the limiting factor for a customer, but that's going to be like the check valve now going forward. Is it the generation size of the renewable system is going to be matched to their energy consumption. We're incorporating a provision that should there be a problem, that we can require them to disconnect the renewable energy source until that problem's addressed. And then finally, there was a provision in the original code where we're asking them for the proof of their homeowner insurance did not, that their homeowner insurance did not exclude renewable energy generation. That was a nightmare to administer, and the moment after an application was approved, they could cancel their homeowner's insurance, and there's no subsequent, process by where everybody every year had to turn in their homeowner's insurance policy. And it was unique to Winnetka, so we're recommending that that provision be eliminated from the code. And with that, I'll open it up to any comments or questions, I should say, from the council. And I know there's one individual that would have some comments related to the policy as well.
Sure. Questions for Brian?
Yes.
Ryan, sort of solar system 101. In Winnetka right now, anyone who has this kind of system would have roof panels. Is that what?
Yeah, all the panels that I'm aware of in Winnetka are currently rooftop panels, correct.
Okay, because I used to work for a solar company and they would also service people that just had farms of panels at ground level. Where in our zoning code do we define what people can and can't do with that kind of equipment?
That's why Mr. Schoen is here.
Oh, okay,
with
well,
me
I'll wait
tonight.
and let David do
No, I'll
his
let David
spiel.
answer that, but I mean, that's the importance of the zoning component. I'll defer to David.
So solar panels that can be incorporated into the design of the home, so follow the slope of the roof, are allowed by right. If you can't do that, then you need to go through the special use permit process. So if someone wanted to put a freestanding solar panel in their yard, that would need to go through the special use permit process.
Okay.
And as long as they're up there, in the same question, not to take your time,
No, it's okay.
the roof panels have to follow the slope of the roof, so they can't be angled on the roof, stacked up,
Correct.
other than going through a special use.
Correct. Then they could, if
Okay.
they went through the special use permit.
And the same thing with the ground, if they want to put them on the ground, it's a special use.
It's special.
Is there any requirement that you can't put them in the front yard yet?
No, that would be evaluated with the special use
Okay.
request.
Okay, thanks.
And again, when you're dealing with, as you know, solar panels, people are striving to get the most sun, and so
Right.
that may be someone's
Right.
argument in terms of the placement.
Yeah.
But again, we haven't had anyone request
Right.
freestanding.
And it might be a little late for
Well, we need to
the
get ahead of
plan, but
Yeah.
there's an item. Okay, sorry, Kim.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, so then it sounds like we need to get ahead of that. And not-
Just in case,
Yeah,
yeah.
just in case.
How many homes are actually using some sort of, taking advantage of this or using some sort of solar?
There's currently 10 that are doing bidirectional metering.
Okay, 10.
New Trier High School has a small system on their roof that's not bidirectional meters, like very small. So there's 10 though that are bidirectional metered at this point in time. And I can tell you there's probably another 3 or 4 that are going through the application process between David's department and mine where they've submitted plans and are considering it. And we have 1 or 2 that have expressed interest that haven't filed.
Okay. I think some of the other things you did were making sure that it fits the size of the house's needs are really good. So people aren't building farms. So I thought that's a very smart way to get ahead of most of that. Okay.
Jump in.
Okay, I keep forgetting which side. So, I guess I have a couple questions. Why is it important for us to limit? Because
So-
I'm thinking of, you know, if people have the Tesla wall and, you know, they can store the energy, I mean, is there a reason why we need to have a kilowatt hour limit?
So the limitation I'm looking at is what they're gonna put back on the system, and the rate structure, I was hoping not to go here. The rate structure in place is if they overproduce, will result in a cost shift to the non-generating members in each respective rate class. So we're paying, in the summer months, we're paying retail, so 15 cents a kilowatt hour, at a point where it really only costs us 8 cents. We've, through a very long, I'll say somewhat painful debate, we landed on that there is some incremental benefit, but it's very difficult on a case-by-case situation to accurately say how much benefit the rest of the customers and when that could get. And in previous council discussions was not to generate a wholesale cost shift or socialization of the costs. So what this is doing is, what the intent here is to meet the requirements that allows a customer to self-generate, fulfill their needs, and if they do battery, they're gonna store it and use it
Right.
behind their meter anyway.
Right.
But what my concern is that we're making sure that what's come back, the total system output that would be coming back to the system is intent, should be matched to what they're going to use.
So I guess I just want to make it clear because I know lots of people in other states that have the Tesla system, the Tesla law. They're not so much, I mean, that's great if they sell back to the, and net metering, but they're really mostly focused on self-sustainability and going off the grid. And, obviously in, Florida and California and places it's easier to do. Even in Connecticut, it's easier to do. So I guess my question is, are we only limiting the kilowatts for net metering? Or if somebody just says, hey, I just want to make sure that I am taking care of my energy needs, even at, it's hard to believe.
I'll
here.
let David weigh in, because there's some maybe overlap with area that he would be administer, but the way I would view this is that we're talking about those customers are asking for an interconnection with the village's electric system.
Okay,
So if a Tesla customer, they're gonna be self-reliant, and they're gonna keep it all behind the meter, they're not gonna be
except when
requesting
they
it.
have to draw off the
They're
grid.
gonna draw from the village
Yeah.
like every other customer,
Right.
but they're not requesting bidirectional mirroring, meaning we have to measure the power that's delivered
Okay.
back. So if they're keeping it behind we would say behind the meter on their side, they get
Yeah.
the full benefit of it. They're gonna store it. Now, one component of this that we did add is we wanna make sure that there's always been some question of, do we allow the Tesla battery packs? And so the village attorney has incorporated language at our request that says we're allowing self-storage if they wanna do that.
Yeah,
And I think part of the explanation backwards,
no, I get
let's
it.
just pretend you spend $1,000 a year on your
No, I get it.
electricity.
Yeah.
You don't want to generate 2,000 to sell it back to the village for 15 cents when the village is buying it for 8 cents,
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Well,
in theory,
the
right?
second
'Cause it
part
could
would be is,
theoretically bankrupt
the
it.
second part is, in to some respect, the rate resolution that you have in place right now, subject to your change, is that for the non-summer months, excess energy is coming back at 8 cents, the wholesale rate. There's really probably not a lot of financial incentive for an applicant to oversize their system because they're only gonna get the wholesale rate in those non-summer months. So there's a couple things that kind of keep it a balanced equation for those customers that are interconnecting to the electric system.
And,
My only other question was, we're limiting to historic use, what if it's new construction, right?
So I
And you
think there was,
change-
the village attorney added language that I can select homes of other suitable size and we can use their consumption. I believe that's incorporated in there. Let's see if I can find that section for
Okay.
you. As a proxy to that.
And again, it's only for selling back, we're not limiting. I'm just worried
So-
about technology so rapidly advancing that,
If-
we could very well get to the point where everybody's shingles are a solar cell, takes away everybody's objection to aesthetics, right?
So to answer your first question, trustee Dahlman, if the applicable available is not, information not available, the average of similar customer as determined by water and electric. So new construction, could look at, find a basis to find similar size consumption pattern, square footage, and look at those consumptions and use that to facilitate the review process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
So I, obviously, this is all good stuff. Long term, let's pretend that every house in Winnetka has panels and net metering back. Long term, it could be many years. How does it affect the whole electric plant budget and we're not even generating power for them in a way?
Well, so actually how it impacts us, I would say probably not so much the electric plant. What happens is it changes how the IMEA or whoever's providing our power has to figure out what they're going to provide for us. So it'll change the curve, our load curve for the village of Winnetka on how much power, when we need it, and how much we would need. While I think it's on an upward swing, I think in 2008, we collectively, everybody stood here and says the affluency of Winnetka, that there will be panels everywhere in Winnetka. And I think it's the balance between the aesthetics, a lot of tree coverage, and the cost. And so we're at a point where we have, 10 systems. So I think I think there is an increase. The incentives are currently there from the state and some at the federal level. So there's still an increase, but I don't think in the short term that we're looking at like a situation where we'll have so much production. But it would, in theory, shift what they have to forecast for our load. Now, in a worst case scenario, you're gonna have swings where we're getting a lot of power from potential excess power. And then we're gonna have to be still set up to provide during peak periods when there's cloudy days when you're running your air conditioner.
Right, okay, thanks.
One other, just since I got the mic and you can't reach me quite that way, but in theory, the other part of the technology that'll come is the battery storage. Technology evolves. That's where I think the industry sees it going, is when there's sun or wind that we'll be able to store it. And at some point, as this technology emerges, then we'll probably see that locally here, where we're going to have a mechanism to store it when it's readily available to use it on a cloudy day.
And as a council, we can adjust those charges back and payouts as needed as we go down the line.
So yeah, so this component is in the rate resolution that's before you. Well, you could choose to do it whenever, but
Sure.
brought to you on an annual basis.
Okay, thank you.
I've seen this issue evolve over the years. I remember the first time this came up, there was almost outright hostility to paying anything but wholesale, and the room was all angry. And so we've been taking these baby steps to try to do exactly, John, what you're saying, and I think that's the right approach. It's just, fortunately we've got Brian who's on this and kind of watching what needs to be done, but I think there's just gonna need to be a lot of adjustments along the way. We're not gonna figure out what life is like in 20 years, although we still probably will have a lot of trees. So you look at Google Maps and solar's not gonna get crazy in Winnetka. It's just
We
not
love
a
our
lot of roof
trees.
coverage. But, the schools, ice arena, Parks District buildings, there's some opportunities there.
Well, I think, I look at feel it's only a matter of time before the high school approaches us. They're
Yeah.
already doing a project on the west campus,
Yeah.
the east campus, so I think that's coming at some point in time. They've floated some introductory technical questions.
Yeah, and going back to the high schools and the big buildings, you're not gonna totally feed a New Trier high school on solar with the land or the roof they have. Because they're always gonna still be buying power. So, yeah.
But when they're not drawing much power in the summer and it's an empty building,
There's still quite a bit of power in there, but
Yeah, there's still enough activities going on and that they're still using a fair amount in the summer. I mean, not as much as when they're in like that August session, but they still have a pretty healthy bill in the summer.
Plus, have you seen that building? It's like the Pentagon. It just goes on and on.
Just the gym alone now.
It's unbelievable.
thank you.
Anybody else? Nope. Would you like to come up and share your thoughts with us?
Yeah, thank you. My name's Andrew Offenbacher, resident at 980 Ash Street. I wrote a letter to the council back in October, so if you read it, thank you. If not, I'll refer to some of the points in the letter. But I think this will be relatively brief. I wanted to thank Brian Keys. You were very helpful, so thank you for kind of coaching me through this. And then also Liz and Patrick from Go Green Winnetka kind of gave me some encouragement to take my concerns to the council. So thank you for the opportunity. So the 10 kW thing, the 10 kilowatt thing, was absolutely a restriction for our system, and we have probably one of the more modest homes in Winnetka, but it happened to have a roof that just made sense to put solar, and so we said, oh, we'll do it. And after going back and forth with Tesla, and I'll comment on that I think shortly, it became clear that they actually had to keep reducing the size of the system to the point where the payback would have. We'll probably be gone somewhere taking care of our parents in a different state at that point. So it was like we're not gonna make that investment. And I think that the change to 25 kilowatts is certainly sufficient for our house. And when I look at our usage, it's less than 25 kilowatts, and so we won't run into that limitation for our installation. But I did have a couple of comments that I think are at least important to consider, if not now, but in the future. So the one is related to the bidirectional question in this, can you have a system that just stores and use? That was actually what I was hoping to do, because I have an electric car. We were planning on buying a second one, and I was thinking we're just going to use this all, and then the additional power we need in the summer for air conditioning, we'll just be pulling from the utility. What I've found is that I have a Tesla, and so I was looking at the Tesla system thinking the compatibility would be good, but I looked at 2 other systems, and all of them said the only systems we're doing now are ones that are bidirectional. They said we used to do one-way systems, or we just had this local thing, but they said we're only doing net metering. And so that's when the village code of the 10 kW came in and limited the system. Otherwise, we probably would have been fine. So had we had the choice, I might not even be here tonight. Just something to consider. The other aspect, and Brian and I talked about this earlier before the meeting, but I'll put my comments on record. I do think that the council will need to be prepared for the question that comes up and says, I got this system installed, and yet I bought another electric car, and I now have exceeded that original thing, and I'd like to expand the system. So one, considering what that looks like and how to approve expansions of a system, I read through all the codes, and I didn't really see anything that talked about how that works. But I did talk with Tesla to say, okay, talk to me about how this would happen, and they said, we've never had anybody ask that question. The reason I bring that up is that it's a lot of work. There's a lot of permitting. There's the huge electrical work that has to be done for the transfer, these installation of the batteries, the people on your roof installing a system. I think you want to do this once, and having some provision for an allowance for, say, like one additional electric car to the home beyond your historical usage, I just think it'd be something that should be considered in the future. I do think, just to kind of put it on the record, that the changes that have been proposed here are great for me, for the other residents that might be considering this, although it sounds like it might just be me and one other person right now. So this might be why there's only 10 homes. It's really hard to do.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Sure.
So on the Tesla now, the charger, you have the charger now.
Yes.
How long does it take to charge your car at night?
So I have an older home with 100 amp service, not
Okay.
200, and so
Yeah.
I have limited it in the summer.
Okay.
Because otherwise I literally tripped the breaker once.
Yeah.
But with the charger I have, it charges at 30 miles range per hour.
Okay.
So if I charge it overnight, by the time it's probably 1 o'clock in the morning, my car is fully
Okay.
charged.
Right.
If I had 200 amps, I would be charging probably at 50 to 60
Right.
miles per hour, about twice as fast.
So if you had 2 cars, could you time the charging to be different times?
You can.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm just
Yeah, the software allows you to kind of
Yeah.
pick when you want it to start.
Okay.
Yep.
so you're not like totally stuck, but
No.
you still have to watch your power with 100 amps.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
also looking at the 200 amp upgrade too. So.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
That's
Just a quick question, do you think the 25 limit is too restrictive then? Because
Yeah.
into a future world, and I know it's controversial, but if you had 3 cars all electric in 5 years, although you can alter it, I suppose. Yeah.
clarify a technical piece
Yeah,
before
great.
you? So the 25 as written is not a limit. It's a limit on how we are going to approach the review. So over 25 is still permitted from a capacity perspective, but it's a more detailed technical review. So the limiting factor, which he's bringing up, and I think you're probing, is it's the kilowatt hours. So the total consumption over an annual perspective. So a typical resident uses, on average, around, depending on which year we look at, 16 to 18,000 kilowatt hours a year. So his system output is got like a 100 watt bulb is rated at 100 watts, but if you use it for so many hours, it has so many kilowatt hours. So we're talking about a system can be larger than 25, but most, as he indicated, most 25 will work for most residential applications. The question he's raising is, we're tying the system size to how much it'll generate in kilowatt hours over the course of a year, and we're using his historical consumption. So the question is there, what he's raising is, should there be an allowance for, I might buy 3 more electric cars or 2 more electric cars that are not in my historical consumption? Should we permit a larger system than his consumption? Sorry.
Right, and he's saying that it's harder to expand it. So rather than going on I guess my question is, I'm not an electrical engineer, but, you know, should we assume that a house that comes in wants to have 2 or 3, you know, total cars at some time in the future, especially since GM has announced that they're going all electric in, 5 years? But maybe I'm misunderstanding the conversation, but I get it, that if you're designing a system today on today's usage, and you know, you may change your total usage. I mean,
Yeah, I think the piece I would say is that we need to make sure that we're giving them from mirroring legislation, we want to make sure that we're allowing them to at least meet their needs. And the question about how much beyond their needs we're going to provide in the concept of kilowatt hours would really be at the council's discretion. So the way the code is enacted is, we're going to look at their history, do an average. If they don't have a history, you know, we can look at a year. If they're a new house, we'll look at an equivalent size, and we'll say they're going to use 18,000 kilowatt hours a year. Your designer should be targeting 18,000 kilowatt hours. So
Right.
the question would be, in his case, should there be an allowance of X% above if we're using 18,000 is the question mark.
right, because we're making these calculations assuming household use, and what I think the biggest change would be cars.
You know, I would just say, as a Tesla owner, I don't have a level 2 charger. We just literally use the old plug. The average American doesn't really drive more than 60 miles a day. I mean, that would actually be a lot. And I'm just looking at our stats for last month, and we drive that car a lot. We spent $39 charging. It's not, there's a lot of belief that there's a ton of electricity being sucked by these cars. And some of the GM pigs probably will suck a lot, like the Hummer.
Right.
But your average Tesla, they're just, it's like another toaster. That, you know, you're making a lot of toast, but it's not, it's not as, I think you got time to think about it. If the issue comes up, yeah, and, you know, maybe we want to make sure there's enough flexibility there, but I wouldn't be too worried right now.
Yeah, it sounds like
Okay.
it's pretty built in.
But I think it's interesting that there's no, I mean, they're only selling, you know, bi-directional systems, right? So that does, I just want to make sure we're not creating a barrier to people adopting these systems.
And tell me, Brian, it sounds like if you're over the 25, you're still allowed to do with different engineering drawings and permitting.
Correct. So like, and so the
Right.
reason we added that provision is if New Trier shows up, they're going to be over 25.
Right.
District 36 shows up, they're over 25. North Shore
Exactly.
Country Day,
Right.
they're over 25.
Good number.
I
So,
mean, their rooftop coverage would easily push them into a different
Right.
category.
and I think part of this is you want to make sure that you're not putting a system in a residence or anywhere, even commercially, that is not generating more by too much than they anticipate to use all year, that they're selling stuff back to the village more than they're buying.
Correct. So in general, we're trying to match the output to what they're generating or what they're going to consume. And we're also trying to make sure that we maintain the policy perspective of we're not doing a cost shift.
Right.
So if it's matched, in theory, they're generating what they need. and it's aligned.
And by matching it to the use in the system, you're also keeping the cost down for the homeowner by not over-designing and making a bigger system than you need.
Yeah, we were talking about that offline, and at some point, there's gonna be a diminishing return for they're not really incentivized to overbuild.
Right.
And then, like I said, the other part is rooftop coverage and trees or other limiting factors as this all plays together.
Thanks.
Sorry.
So Brian, if my wife and I go by his, he's got 3 kids or whatever, he generates a lot of power and so on, he's got the system. My wife and I go by his house and we use half of the electric that his family used. Am I then selling that back to the village? I mean, Tina, you just talked about it going one way, can it go the other way?
So.
You're selling it back.
So it's gonna, no matter what happens with what, if he takes a 6-month sabbatical and goes on a cruise and their energy consumption declines, anything that's not immediately consumed in his house is gonna, excess power with the solar or renewable system on is gonna come back to the village, and depending on what time of year it is, we're always metering what comes back, and then the rate for non-summer months, he's gonna get the wholesale cost for any kilowatt hour, so 8 cents. And during the summer months, he's gonna get 15 cents a kilowatt hour for the energy delivered to the village's system. So his own pattern could change, or you could be a subsequent purchaser with just 2 of you or 15 of you and swing it either way. So the same resident that's delivering power to us now could later on change their pattern and put in 50 more toasters or 18 more kids and never deliver any excess energy. So one of our customers that we have right now has never delivered any excess energy to the village. They put in bidirectional metering. They're consuming all of it behind the meter.
Right, but if I'm a low energy user and I buy a home that has gotten excess power put
So
in and so on, I can then go in there
You're
and
gonna get
sell
credits.
50% of it back to the village.
You don't really make, it all happens automatically. So the meter, electricity is
I
gonna
understand,
flow.
but that could be to my benefit as a low
Correct.
user.
Yeah, but you'll find out the cost to put it in is not to your benefit.
Well, I'm not putting it
He's,
in mine.
he's the second one. So in your, Trustee Dearborn, in your scenario, you move into his house after he sells it.
Yeah.
And it's just 2 of you, you have lower energy needs, you're gonna be delivering more to the village than normal. You're gonna get, the credit's gonna show on your utility bill. And then you're gonna get more credits than he would, because you're electing not to consume it behind the.
So I
meter.
guess I listen to these, I'm not an expert here by any means, but I listen to these sort of back and forth, and it seems to me you've kind of tried to find this balance that it can be increased in certain cases, but we're not going crazy in what people can put in.
I'm trying to find a balance where we're not automatically oversizing every system, and the way we're proposing is looking at historical consumption. Because I also have some sense that, there's not probably too many places in Winnetka, but we're trying to prohibit someone from coming in and putting, let's say, the whole lot in solar panels. So they have one 60 amp service, but they want to put the whole place in solar panels and turn it into just a solar production entity. This is supposed to be to match their needs.
Well, okay, well, so, I don't know if people are gonna create solar farms in a residential area, because zoning codes could limit that. But I also wanna make sure that if somebody is deciding between a house in Wilmette, where they're dealing with ComEd, versus a house in Winnetka, that they're not at a disadvantage.
So-
Because we
We're
run-
never at a disadvantage with Commonwealth Edison.
No, but I mean, in terms of how the net metering is established.
So that would require revisiting policy direction that was established in 2019. So that's 1-to-1 metering. So right now, the main difference in the scenario that you just articulated is ComEd's mandated to provide retail year-round. The village is elected to say we'll do retail in the 4 summer months, but not in the 8 non-summer months. That's not a change that we've proposed. I mean, if the council, obviously, you're directed to revisit it, that's your choice.
It was like
That was
pushing a
not-
rock up a mountain to get us to that point.
No, we're not re-
But I
we're
would
not
suggest if
revisiting
you,
this.
I've been through 2, 3-hour study sessions on this issue. The first one was ugly, insane. The second one, we got to this compromise thing that we've got now. I would encourage you guys, once I'm gone in 2 months, to
No,
do
we're
it
not,
again.
I was there in 2008 too. I'm not doing it. No.
So,
And I think, Tina, I hear what you're saying, but let me just
Yeah.
clarify some of the broader thinking that's come out of multiple conversations that you didn't have the enjoyment of participating in. If an applicant comes to Brian and says, I'm thinking of getting a couple extra cars, it looks like I'm gonna be over the 25 kW, Brian's gonna look at his chart and say, well, yeah, if you had 2 more cars, you're gonna be over average for your type of house, right? I mean, you do that assessment and say, okay, a normal house consumes 18 kW for the year, right? That was the example you were just using.
18,000
Right,
kilowatt hours.
18,000. So, but given the fact that you're gonna have 2 more electric cars that you wanna charge with solar, I can see that you're going to exceed the 25 kW. They can do that. They can sit down and say, well, we're looking to the future and we wanna do that, but it kicks them into a different assessment and review with Brian and David relative to the additional, anything over the 25
If they trigger over
kW.
the 25, but, so again, there's a couple different themes.
Don't go into the weeds,
Okay.
keep it up high.
All right,
Wait,
I'm gonna keep it
just,
up high,
just
so.
remember, we're talking
No,
about
we're not
like
going into the weeds.
$200.
Right.
That's what
That- That's
like,
what got us to the,
that's what got us over this horrible discussion the last time, is when you do the math, one electric car, it's less than 2,000 kilowatt hours a year. Multiplied by 15 cents, you're talking $295. The difference between that and wholesale is like $147.
Right, right.
So I wouldn't get spun around the wheel on this
Right.
one.
No.
Yeah. And the size of the service, if Andy's saying he can just plug his car into a 110 outlet,
110.
it takes 8 hours, that's okay, because you can have 4 outlets in your garage maybe that are 110. So,
No, we do generational surveys, and I will tell you, right, this is a very important issue to the younger generation that will be buying our houses at some point. I just want to make sure we don't have any,
And then Brian and his
Barriers.
successors will be here to revise the code yet
Yeah.
again.
yeah,
I mean, the nice thing is just because we're doing this today doesn't mean in a year we couldn't change it or come up with new information like the things you're bringing forth, on an extra car. It doesn't fit into the average of a 3,000 square foot house and blah, 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 blah.
and we're paying for the summer months, which is when they really need electricity.
Right.
And it would help to have some solar generated. So.
Right. That all make sense? You good, Tina?
yeah. We ate into your public comment time.
That's okay.
Do you have anything else to add based on this conversation?
I feel like I shouldn't belabor it, but I just want to add one point of clarification on that last point, because you talked about the average. And in the way that I read the proposed changes, it wasn't talking about the average of an average home. It was talking about my average over the
Right.
last 3 years.
That's correct.
And if I am going to add some load by buying a new car, and my usage is a lot more than yours, by the way, my commute is not as good, that to me is something that should at least be considered. So for instance, right now, I'll do the math when I get home, because now I'm intrigued. If I did not buy a new electric car tomorrow, what would my electric use be? It would be the last 3 years, because I've had this car now for 5 years.
Right.
If I bought one tomorrow and fast forwarded 12 months, I would be able to show you, Brian, that my 12 months from now until 12 months from now is different than my average over my last 3 years. And I think that may affect my system size that I would request. So I'm actually going to look at this and say, should I wait to install my solar system until after I buy a new car and use it and charge it for a year? That's a little wacky that I have to think about that in order to make this decision on the solar system. So, yeah.
He's gonna look at the numbers and the calculations. It's not gonna have to, there's a lot of discretion that we give Brian and the electric department to do these things.
Okay.
And if you sit down with them and say, hey, I'm buying 2 electric cars and I'm gonna have this additional thing, there's a formula that can calculate how much you're gonna need based on your projected usage or your projected mileage for the year. You're gonna know how much you have to put back
yeah.
into the batteries, right?
I would hope so.
You don't
it's
need
not
to
the way
wait
I
a
read
year
this,
to have that information.
It's an easy number.
You know, in the interest of the technical, because it is intriguing, is I'll make we'll reach out after staff and we'll do some comparisons with knowing the timing when he bought it to see if it actually generates any type of shift in the approach. If there's concern that it's going to be too strictly applied, and again, you know, we could look at, you know, you could say within 5% of the customer's historical use.
I'm not looking to change
Okay,
anything
okay.
on the paper tonight,
Yeah,
Brian.
and
No.
part of figuring out your solar system,
Uh-uh.
if you've got a normal house with no electric car, I'm sure easily can say, okay, here's what I need for one electric car. I anticipate putting it in, and Brian will hopefully work with that whole system that way or something, but makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is gonna be trial and error to a certain degree. I mean, it has to be, because there's so many things that are unknown and so many things that, you know, if the cars get more efficient and the batteries get more efficient, that's gonna change the equation, you know? So there's a lot of pieces here that we don't know about. And I'm not willing to let 7 people who are not specialists in solar energy sit here and try to manipulate this document in front of us with 5% more or this. No, I mean, that's just not where we're gonna be. I'd rather see you back in a year or two saying, hey,
It's not working.
it's not working, or we've run into, or everybody's asking for more. So I think that's kind of, at least I think that's the right way to go about it, right? I mean, nothing's written in stone here. So that's the good news. Awesome, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just want to point out that he can charge over here now too, when he comes to visit you next time, out in the parking lot. 10 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yeah, the only thing I was unhappy about, it's tucked over there in the corner where nobody can see it, but I'm sure there was a reason for that too.
Lots of discussions on that.
Okay, any more questions for Brian?
No.
Okay, I don't see any more public comments, so, okay, I screwed up. First, we're talking about ordinance number MCO 3/2023. So can I have a motion to introduce that ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. And the second one, you have more to say, Brian?
No, I'm sorry. I was gonna talk about the resolution and just provide some clarity when you're ready for that topic.
I'm ready for it right now.
Okay, so when originally constructed, not to revisit a lot of the conversation that we already had, that summer credit that I've mentioned 14 times in the previous discussion was all based on residential customers. And we do have one commercial customer, albeit they've never generated a credit, but should they or any other subsequent customer that's not a residential customer generate excess credit in the summer months, the way that the rate resolution is written is that we're crediting them at the residential rate. So what this change before you would do is ties the summer energy retail credit to the customer's original rate class. So if it's a school and government customer, they're in the summer months, they get the summer retail for the school and government rate classification. If they're a commercial customer, they get the credit for summer energy for a commercial customer. As written, and probably not its true intention, but as written when staff implemented it, and because all our scenarios were related to residential customers, it says you get the residential retail rate. So we're just trying to clean this up to match the rate classes.
Any
Sense.
questions on that?
No.
Okay, let's see if we can move this forward. Can I have a motion to introduce resolution number R30/2023?
So moved.
Second.
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries, thank you. Good work, Brian. Someday we'll understand what you're talking about. Yeah, no, thank you. Okay, item 9, old business, there's none. Item 10, new business, there's none. Item 11, appointments, there is none. Closed session, may I have a motion to adjourn to closed session for the purpose of discussing personnel pursuant to Section 2C1 of the Open Meetings Act and to adjourn the special open meeting special open meeting.
Just the closed session.
The closed session automatically and immediately upon conclusion of the closed session. Oh, God.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Dearborn?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
Trustee Apitoff?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Must have been left over. Well, we're